Record number of African migrants are arriving at the US-Mexico border. Now, there's many reasons why this is kind of strange, out of place. First, with all of the changes Donald Trump has made to immigration, notably security, cost increases, and other rule changes like remain in Mexico, for instance, immigration is down across the board. In fact, many of the people from Central America who came to the US-Mexico border to seek asylum were told to remain in Mexico and then ultimately went home or just left because they didn't want to. Now we're hearing about refugees from Africa, places like Cameroon or Angola, flying across the Atlantic Ocean, traveling from South America through Central America and up to the US-Mexico border to try and gain entry to the US. It seems out of place because the journey is so arduous and long. They're literally on the other side of the planet. If it was truly about being a refugee, you'd think they'd go to any one of the safe and beautiful countries in South America instead of trying to make their way to the US border. But I think there's one thing we can look at that, well, there's a couple things. First, America's awesome. Of course, they'd rather be here than, say, Mexico or Brazil. But, Mexico's a pretty rad place. Brazil's a pretty rad place. But the big issue, I think, that is often overlooked, or maybe not, is that the southern border was ignored and left porous for a very long time. I think you can extrapolate from the data tracking immigration apprehensions that under Obama, it was extremely lax. Perhaps it's not that we're facing a record number of African migrants now. Perhaps the number's actually down. Perhaps what we're really seeing is that with the increase in security, we can now track the number of migrants coming to the border, and we were unable to in the past, which is kind of scary. But again, that's my assumption. So let's do this. Let's start with this story from the LA Times of the record number of African migrants, and then we'll move through here and look at how the Trump administration has actually won on the immigration front. But we'll also take a look at how immigration was under Obama, and I'll tell you what I think. We'll expand upon this idea of we're actually just tracking these numbers now. Maybe they're going down. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com/donate if you would like to support my work. There's several different options to support, but the best thing you can do is just share this video. I'm competing with all these big networks right now. They're screeching about impeachment, but you know what? We're not learning anything new. So if you think I do a good job, you like what I have to say, or you think there's value in other people hearing it, sharing this is one of the most effective ways to help me continue doing what I do. But let's read. The LA Times reports, the number of migrants from African countries in Mexico who have had contact with Mexican immigration officials has increased from 460 in 2007 to more than 5,800 in 2019. Right there, we can see how we can explain this. Who have had contact with Mexican immigration officials. Perhaps the number is steady or going down, and it's just that Mexico wasn't tracking these people before until Trump got serious. Or these people were making it through the porous border and no one was tracking them. And now that we have increased security, we can see these people are traveling halfway around the world to enter this country. Let's read. The number of African migrants heading to the U.S. through Mexico has more than doubled this year, from roughly 2,700 in 2018 to 5,800 today, according to data from the federal government. That figure has been steadily rising since 2007, the year the Mexican government began including migrants from African countries who have contact with immigration officials in their annual migration reports, when that number was 460. And that dramatic increase has been mostly left out of the U.S. immigration conversation, activists say. Quote, even with the immigration movement, you see a lack of visibility of black narratives with what is happening at the border, said Gerline Yosef, director and co-founder of the Haitian Bridge Alliance, an organization that helps black migrants from all over the world. Yosef was initially caught off guard by the number of black migrants south of the border. In 2016, she didn't know how to respond to a call she got about a group of Haitian migrants in Tijuana. She couldn't understand why they were in Tijuana instead of in Florida, the more traditional migration route for Caribbean migrants. Notably, Haitians are not African. I'll make sure that point is clear. At the time, honestly, I did not believe it, she said. But she went anyway and met with 12 Haitian migrants. She stayed a month and counted more than 400 black migrants from not just Haiti, but Congo, Cameroon, and Sierra Leone as well. Now, almost 4 years later, we have thousands and thousands of black migrants. I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to paraphrase Bernie Sanders. You see, earlier this year, he was asked if he would be for open borders, if he would open up the borders, and Bernie Sanders said no. The world has too many poor people. We can't help them all. Now, he's flip-flopped a little bit. talking about deportations and a moratorium and such. But that's what Bernie Sanders said. And you know what? He was right. The United States cannot just allow every single person to come here. We want to have a refugee process for people who truly are in need and need to be saved. But I got to tell you, if you're from Congo, Cameroon, Angola, Sierra Leone, and you're traveling halfway around the world, with stopping over in many places that are safe and comfortable, I don't believe it's truly about escaping a crisis as opposed to coming to one of the wealthiest and most comfortable nations and one of the freest nations. And so it's really interesting to hear all of these activists talk about the great problems the U.S. faces, how bad Trump is, yet you still see people risking their lives, traveling the world, desperate to come here. With all the stories about the migrant detention centers and how bad they are still trying to come here. That says something. Let's read on. The overwhelming number of people who travel through Mexico to get to the U.S. continue to be from Central America. The journey isn't easy. Many of them are robbed and beaten while traveling north. On top of these dangers, African migrants face additional obstacles in terms of language and cultural barriers. They also have less access to services from legal aid organizations who do not have staff who speak the same language as the migrants. They also face racism and discrimination because of the color of their skin, Yosef added. This summer, the migrants faced a new obstacle at the Mexico-Guatemala border. They are being prevented from reaching the U.S. border, according to activists on the ground. In August, the Mexican government stopped issuing African migrants transit visas that allow them to travel north of the border with the United States. Instead, officials are asking migrants to apply for residency or a visa in Mexico, which advocates fear could potentially jeopardize future asylum claims in the United States. I'm sorry, man. Now, you may disagree, but I do not respect an asylum claim from someone who traveled halfway around the world and passed through several safe states, safe countries, to get here. Mexico is nice. There are dangerous parts, but it is a very nice country. You've clearly never been there. Like the people who disagree, I'm saying. Brazil is incredible. Brazil is beautiful. They got their problems, but Brazil really is pretty, there's amazing places. In fact, I got to say, there are some, you've got Bolivia, you've got Colombia, not the wealthiest, not necessarily the safest, but safe, enjoyable, comfortable. I'm sorry. If you're going to cross the Atlantic into Brazil and reject Brazil's hospitality, I'm not sure I believe you're truly trying to flee some kind of crisis. I think it's just about improving your life, finding a wealthier nation. And I can respect that. But I can also, but you're also going to have to respect that there are citizens here who contribute to our comfortable and wealthy nation, and that many people want to take advantage of that. When you come here and claim it's about asylum, you are taking advantage of our hospitality, and you are displacing those who truly need our help. That's the big problem, and why African migrants stand out so much more than anyone from Central America. Because I'll tell you this, people who come from Honduras, Guatemala, I'm listening. You come to Mexico and say, we can't stay here because the gangs operate here too. I hear you. You get to the U.S. border, all right. You're a neighbor to the south, but these people are coming from Africa, man. I mean, Europe is closer than the United States, but for some reason they want to come here. So let me show you this, because it's there's a lot of news around this that's kind of been neglected because the impeachment insanity. This story, lawmakers visit African migrants at U.S.-Mexico border from November 26th, only got 46 shares. So this is being covered. Nobody's talking about it. But I tell you now, I'm willing to bet this video gets substantially less views than impeachment nonsense. But you know what? I've had enough. This is important, okay? When it comes to impeachment, they're telling us the same nonsense we've heard a million times. I don't want to hear it, okay? Let's see what's going on. Now, the reason I highlight this is specifically for this passage. Now, obviously, it's mostly Democrats, and it's the Congressional Black Caucus who are meeting with these African migrants. But the Hill reports, most of the migrants stranded at the port of entry came from Cameroon, a majority French-speaking country where a simmering civil war is in its English-speaking regions. Has forced more than 500,000 people from their homes, according to the International Crisis Group. Mexico has long been a host to third country migrants seeking entry to the U.S. But the number of African migrants in the country is growing as routes into Europe become more dangerous, according to multiple media reports. They say most of these migrants are coming from Cameroon. So I decided to pull up a map, and now I'm going to show you just how far away it truly is. So let me ask you, what is the most dangerous? Is it more dangerous to go to any one of these other countries in Africa nearby, or to travel across the Atlantic into Brazil, to make your way up all the way through all of these other countries. And I tell you this, the people who are coming here from Cameroon, I mean, maybe they fly to Mexico, but many of the stories that we've covered in the past, that I've covered in the past, about, say, Angola, for instance, people coming from the Congo, they're traveling from the Congo through Angola into Brazil and then up through South and Central America. But these countries like Honduras and Guatemala have migrants fleeing their own countries there because it's dangerous. So I tell you this, man, these people who are claiming it's too dangerous to go to Europe, when they literally travel through countries where people are fleeing because it's too dangerous to then try and come here, I don't believe it. I don't. Now, that's not for me to decide. It's for the U.S. immigration system to decide. But you know what? They're telling these people they have to remain in Mexico because, unfortunately, they don't really believe it either. And there's now a new rule being put in place by Trump that if you pass through a safe third country on your way here, you will be ineligible. And you know what? That makes sense. It does not make sense for someone to come to Brazil. I've been to Brazil several times, and I assure you, you should definitely go there. It is awesome. Brazil is an amazing place. It's beautiful. It's got amazing tourist spots. So it's crazy. I think the reason it's so crazy to me is because I would prefer to go there, right? Like I would go vacation there, and it's crazy that so many people would want to go to to Rio, to Copacabana, Sao Paulo, and enjoy Brazil and their food. And there are people like going through there, but then saying this is not good enough for us. Man, we want to go there. I know Americans who moved there permanently. It's not the wealthiest nation, but Brazil's nice. I mean, there's also Argentina and Uruguay and Paraguay. There's places near Brazil, but for some reason, it's always the United States. And I think it's obvious. We're wealthy. So let's do this. I think you can see on the map, there's Cameroon highlighted in red. It's a big journey. Take a look at these numbers from the Texas Tribune, though. They say apprehensions soared during the Clinton and Bush administrations, but fell under Obama. Since 1999, the highest number of apprehensions recorded was in March 2000, during Bill Clinton's presidency, when 220,000 migrants were apprehended. The surge in apprehensions in the summer of 2019 was much smaller, but it came close to spikes during George W. Bush's presidency. Here's the big problem. We track illegal immigration by how many people are apprehended. That means if someone says don't apprehend them or doesn't provide the resources to actually stop illegal immigration, the numbers will drop. You see how this works? There's a really funny shower thought. If you're familiar with shower thoughts, it says, if we abolish all criminal law, the crime rate will drop to zero. Yes, because if nothing is illegal, then you can't arrest anybody, and then the amount of arrest and crime will be nothing. But there will certainly be horrible things happening to people. Take a look at this. During Bush and Clinton, major spikes in apprehensions. During Obama, a major decline. Now, they do note that in 2014, there was an uptick. The problem is this may be because migrants aren't coming or because Obama was not prioritizing apprehensions. Now, it's also true they called Obama the deporter in chief. So maybe I really doubt, that Obama wanted to take flack for deporting so many people. If anything, he'd be better off stopping them at the border instead of deporting them because people are dragging Joe Biden over this. But we can see it dropped to its lowest as we enter the Donald Trump era. Just after, during the Obama's administration, the number dips, Trump gets in, and the number spikes back to previous George W. Bush levels. So again, I think what we're seeing here may be more easily explained in Obama not enforcing border security. I almost want to say, maybe not, because I know many Democrats during the Obama administration had voted for border security, but it could just be that they were not apprehending people. So you got to make sure you're tracking that. Is it possible that the number of apprehensions are going down now under Trump because they've stopped apprehending people? I mean, it doesn't mean people aren't coming. So here's what I think. I think for the longest time, our government ignored African migrants. And now that Trump is enforcing these stricter rules, and I'll show you the data, I mean, you know it, but I can show you it's working. We're now seeing those numbers for the first time, and it looks like they're much higher, may actually be lower. But I will also, look, I understand it's really hard to extrapolate or to know for sure what the data means. It's also entirely possible the spike is due to many of these migrants trying to make it to Europe, but now Europe is cracking down with the rise of the right-wing populist movements, people in, say, Italy and France saying no more to this immigration. And with the slave trade in Libya, many of these people are saying you're better off going to the United States. That may be as well. But first, let me show you this. In an article from the Huffington Post talking about how Trump really did get his wall, they call it his figurative wall, they say, in the 2 years after Trump took office, denials for H-1B visas, the most common form of visa for skilled workers, more than doubled. In the same period, wait times for citizenship also doubled, while average processing times for all kinds of visas jumped by 46%. Even as the quantity of applications went down, in 2018, the United States added just 200,000 immigrants to the population, a startling 70% less than the year before. You may have seen that the job numbers are really good. It's also true that H-1B visas are being denied. I believe there's a correlation there. A lot of companies want to hire international skills. International talent. The Trump administration is denying that, which means you got to hire American. The American unemployment goes down, the economy does well, consumer confidence surges. That may be a result. But let's check out, we got a story from just today. Check this out. Arrests and removals of illegal immigrants up under Trump, a majority convicts. So I don't need to get into too much about these details. It's a very short story. But the key takeaway is the people that Trump is targeting right now, they say are majority convicted criminals. Let's read. They say, in comparing the targeting of illegal immigrants under Obama and President Trump, the Government Accountability Office found that more were grabbed by the GOP administration and that a majority were convicted criminals. The reason that bit is important is because Joe Biden took flack, and he continues to take flack, over the Obama administration's deportation of 3 million people. He says, don't compare what we did to Donald Trump. Biden says, under me, we're going to be targeting criminals and we're going to prioritize this. Well, at least according to the Government Accountability Office, it seems like the GOP may be targeting more convicted criminals than the Obama administration did. But it's not just the hard security and rules Trump is implementing. One of the big reasons people aren't coming is kind of obvious. The consequences are scarier than the reality. Check this out. CBS News reports, consequences causing major drop in number of migrant families and kids at border. Perhaps the reason Donald Trump implemented these rules was not just because you could actually enforce the laws and apprehend people, but that if people knew the enforcement was happening, they would be disincentivized from taking dangerous journeys. Take a look at this. I now want to show you this map one more time. Look how long this journey is from Cameroon to South America, up through all of these dangerous countries. Now, look, you got Honduras, you got Guatemala. Even people who live there say it's dangerous. They want to come to the United States. One of the smartest things we can do is disincentivize this behavior. Now, I don't necessarily agree with a lot of Trump's policies, and I really do not agree with the idea that cruelty would be a good way to demotivate people from coming here. But I will say it seems to be the case. Whether or not it was Trump's intention to create the press around squalor and these horrifying conditions, it exists. And I assure you, with these stories about people not making it, dying, and children, there's probably a lot of families that are now being disincentivized, saying the risk is greater than the reward. You're not going to make it, in which case they don't. But let me read a little bit here. They say, CBS News says, U.S. border officials in October apprehended more than 35,000 migrants, including nearly 10,000 families and 3,000 unaccompanied migrant children along the U.S.-Mexico border, marking the fifth consecutive monthly decline in arrests there. CBP officials said Thursday. Single adult migrants comprised the bulk of those apprehended at nearly 23,000 arrests in fiscal year 2019. CBP officials said about 65% of migrants encountered at the southern border were families and unaccompanied children. In October, those populations constituted about 35% of all apprehensions. So now, the reason I highlight this is I want to compare it back to that chart I just showed you. Right now, under Trump, there was a massive spike in apprehensions, but it's dropped in October. They're saying, according to CBS, or the officials are saying, the reason it's dropped is not because they aren't enforcing, but because less people are coming over fear of the consequences. And that was one of the major goals of the Trump administration, at least purportedly. It's possible during the Obama administration, they weren't apprehending anybody. So not only are the numbers hard to track or extrapolate from, we're having a ton of migrants come in, less enforcement, more deportations. It seems like it may be the case that we just weren't tracking these numbers properly. Trump, according to every media outlet, is getting stricter on how they apprehend and the rules they're putting in place. So it stands to reason that these may be the real numbers that we're now finally seeing, with more security, with more ICE and CBP actually apprehending and tracking and talking to these people. We're getting a better view of what's happening. And it may be that the Huffington Post is correct, that Trump did get his wall, with immigration down across all metrics, from illegal to even legal, H-1B visas, etc. Trump really did get his wall. And I think that's the best way I can put it. So let me wrap this up for you guys. I don't know why we're seeing a record number of African migrants, but I think you would be unsurprised to find Americans maybe untrusting, not trusting of these individuals coming here claiming to be migrants because of how dangerous the trip is. So I end by wrapping this all together. If the consequences of the new administration are causing migrants to not want to come to this country, okay, but these people are still trying to come amid all of the dangers and amid these new rules, it stands to reason, in my opinion, they're not really refugees. They're not people who know that if they stay, look, listen, the trip here is so dangerous and the rules are so strict, they would probably be better off staying somewhere else. So I guess it's fair to say maybe it's that bad in their country. But here's why I don't believe that. Because they could, like I said, Brazil is nice. And I really mean that. I love that place. If they could stay in Brazil and avoid the perilous journey and the conflicts at home, you'd think that would make sense, but they don't do it. So that's why I got to say, in my opinion, I don't necessarily trust these people coming here claiming to be refugees. But you know what? It doesn't matter. My opinion is irrelevant. What matters is what law enforcement officials determine. And if they say they're not really migrants, they'll get rejected. And if they're passing through safe third countries where they could be safe but choose not to, then the administration is going to turn them away. So I'll leave it there. You let me know what you think. You know, I don't want to ascribe motives to a lot of these people. I know America's nice. I'm an American. It's a great country. And even with all of the negative press and the fear mongering and the outrage from the left, these people are still desperate to come here. You know what? I can empathize with that. I love this country too, man. But we cannot take in everybody. Just not possible. Let me know what you think. Stick around. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m. at youtube.com/TimCastNews. And I will see you all then.